Have you ever heard of a man who seemed invincible? A warrior who could single-handedly defeat entire armies, yet at the same time became a prisoner of his own passions and choices. This is the story of Samson, one of the most fascinating and enigmatic figures in the Bible. His life was marked by miracles, epic battles, human weaknesses, and a tragic destiny that, even in his death, fulfilled the purpose for which he was born. Today, we will dive deeply into this narrative, exploring every detail, every victory, every fall, and reflecting on how his story still resonates today. To understand Samson, we need to go back in time to one of the most unstable periods in Israel's history. After conquering the Promised Land under Joshua's leadership, the people had no kings and no centralized government. Each tribe lived relatively independently, and when crises arose, God would raise leaders called judges. These judges were not kings, but warriors, prophets, or military leaders who appeared at specific times to deliver Israel from oppression. It was a time of spiritual highs and lows. Israel frequently turned away from God, fell into idolatry, suffered oppression from neighboring peoples, cried out for help, and then God would raise a judge to restore order. In Samson's time, the enemies were the Philistines. They inhabited the coastal region of the Mediterranean, had advanced technology for the era, especially in iron weapons, and were militarily powerful. Their culture differed greatly from the Hebrews, and their religion involved worship of gods like Dagon and rituals considered abominable by the Israelites. For 40 years, the Philistines dominated Israel, imposing their will and humiliating God's people. It was in this context of darkness that the promise of a deliverer began to emerge. Among the tribes of Israel, there was a man named Manoah, from the tribe of Dan. He and his wife lived under the pain of infertility, something difficult in any era, but especially then, when children were seen as blessings and the continuity of the family. But when all hope seemed lost, the supernatural occurred. An angel of the Lord appeared to Manoah's wife and delivered astonishing news. She would have a son, and this son would not be ordinary. He would be a Nazarite from birth, consecrated to God for life. This meant he could not drink wine, could not touch anything unclean, and could never cut his hair. The boy would be different, set apart for a specific purpose, to begin delivering Israel from the Philistines. Imagine the joy of that woman, a life of infertility transformed by the promise that her son would be chosen by the Lord. Manoah, hearing the news, asked for confirmation, and the angel appeared again. They offered a sacrifice, and the angel ascended in the flames, confirming that the promise was true. Thus Samson was born, whose name can mean little sun, or ray of light. From childhood, the boy was different. The Spirit of the Lord began to move in him, preparing him for the destiny to come. As an adult, Samson revealed a strong and impulsive personality. One of his first controversial decisions was to fall in love with a Philistine woman, which went against his parents' wishes. They tried to dissuade him. "Isn't there a woman among our people? Why choose one among the enemies?" But Samson insisted. The biblical text tells us that this choice was part of God's plan, even though Samson did not understand it. It was the beginning of a series of confrontations with the Philistines. On his way to the wedding, Samson experienced something extraordinary. A young lion roared and attacked him, and filled with the Spirit of the Lord, he tore it apart with his bare hands, without any weapon. Days later, passing the same place, he discovered a swarm of bees and honey inside the lion's carcass. He ate the honey and took some to his parents without revealing its source. This incident inspired a riddle he posed at his wedding feast. Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. The guests could not solve it, and pressured Samson's bride to get the answer from him. Feeling betrayed, Samson became enraged, killed 30 Philistine men, and gave their clothes as payment for the riddle. This incident triggered a spiral of violence and disputes, culminating in Samson setting fire to the Philistines' crops by tying torches to foxes' tails. Samson's feats soon became legendary. On one occasion, he was surrounded in a city, but at midnight he tore the massive city gates off and carried them to the top of a distant hill, humiliating his enemies. Perhaps his most impressive act was when he faced 1,000 armed soldiers using only a donkey's jawbone he found on the ground. Imagine 1,000 warriors falling before a single man whose strength came directly from the Spirit of God. But while his physical strength was unparalleled, his emotional vulnerability made him fragile. Samson allowed himself to be swayed by passions, particularly women. It was in one of these passions that he met Delilah. Her beauty captivated him, but the Philistine leaders saw her as the perfect opportunity. They offered her a great reward to discover the secret of Samson's strength. She began insisting daily, "Tell me, Samson, what is the secret of your strength?" He gave false answers, mentioning new ropes or bound hair, but Delilah did not give up. With tears and manipulation, she pressed him relentlessly until, exhausted, Samson finally revealed the truth. "My strength lies in my hair. If it is cut, I will become as any other man." That night, while Samson slept on Delilah's lap, she called a man to cut his hair. When the Philistines attacked, he tried to fight, but he realized his strength was gone. The Spirit of the Lord had departed from him. The once invincible warrior became vulnerable. They captured Samson, gouged out his eyes, shackled him in bronze, and put him to work grinding grain in prison. The man who had once been feared by armies was now blind, humiliated, and defeated. Yet the story was not over. While in prison, Samson's hair began to grow again, a sign that his consecration had not been fully nullified, and that God still had plans for him. The day came for a great Philistine celebration in honor of their god Dagon. The temple was packed with princes, leaders, and thousands of people. They brought Samson to entertain the crowd, mocking the once powerful judge of Israel. Blind, he asked the young man guiding him to place him between the central pillars supporting the temple. There, Samson prayed one final prayer. "Lord God, remember me. Strengthen me just this once, so I may take vengeance on the Philistines for my eyes." With his hands on the pillars, Samson summoned his last strength and pushed. The temple began to shake, and in a final act of sacrifice, it collapsed on everyone inside. Thousands died, including Samson. On that day, he killed more Philistines in his death than he had in his entire life. He sacrificed himself to fulfill his purpose, to begin Israel's deliverance. Samson's legacy is complex. On one hand, he was a deliverer, someone who began to break the Philistine yoke over Israel. On the other hand, his life was marked by impulsive choices and weaknesses that prevented an even greater destiny. He teaches us that extraordinary gifts cannot replace discipline and faithfulness. He shows that true strength lies not just in muscles but in a life guided by God. Even today, Samson's story provokes reflection. How many of us have incredible talents and abilities but waste them due to lack of control over our weaknesses? How often do we let fleeting passions lead us away from a greater purpose? Yet his story also reminds us that even when we fall, God can turn our failures into part of his plan. What impresses you most about Samson's life? His extraordinary strength, his vulnerability, or his ultimate redemption? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more biblical stories told in detail beyond what you've ever heard. Every character in the Bible carries eternal lessons for our lives. Samson, with his life of glory and tragedy, continues to echo as one of the greatest examples that true strength comes from God.